For 10 years, I forged a sword for my country. I came back to the house I once called home in rags. My parents, however, were embracing their real son, the man who had taken my place for a decade, and told me to get out of their mansion. They had no idea that their family's corporate empire owed its very existence to a single phone call I made. They knew even less that the citywide drone light show, the one their precious son was using for a grand marriage proposal, had me as its lead architect. And that on that night, my childhood sweetheart, the ice-cold CEO, would walk through the adoring crowds under the gaze of thousands, just to come to me and say, "Jake, welcome home." Chapter 1. You've got a lot of nerve showing your face here. The sharp voice, like an icicle dipped in venom, stabbed into my ears. I stood in the center of the Hayes family's dazzling grand foyer, still wearing the faded, worn-out hoodie I'd traveled in. The duffel bag at my feet was caked with the dust of a long journey. 10 years. For 10 long years, I had thrown myself into Project Aegis, the nation's most classified defense initiative. I was cut off from the world, with no news in or out. Now, with the project's first phase complete, I'd finally been granted a month of leave. I had rushed back, my heart racing with anticipation. But what greeted me wasn't a family's warm embrace, but a house full of strangers and hostility. The woman who spoke was my mother, Eleanor Hayes. Dressed in an expensive couture gown, she was affectionately holding the arm of a young man in a tailored suit. The way she looked at me was with the same disgust one might reserve for a piece of trash. I'd never seen the man before, but there was a 7/10 resemblance to my father, Robert Hayes, in his features. My heart sank like a stone. My father stood up from the sofa, his face dark enough to wring water from. He pointed at the man beside me, his voice devoid of any warmth. "Jake, I'd like you to meet Leo Hayes. He is my biological son. There was a mix-up at the hospital 26 years ago. He is the true heir to the Hayes family." A roar filled my ears, and my mind went blank. My blood felt like it had turned to ice, a chilling cold seeping into every limb. I looked at my father, then my mother, and finally my gaze fell on my sister, Ashley Hayes, who was hiding behind Leo and glaring at me with contempt. Not a single one of them had a word to say in my defense. Their faces showed only the ecstatic joy of having found their lost son. And for me, the imposter, nothing but disgust and disdain. Leo walked toward me, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips. He clapped me on the shoulder, the force heavy and humiliating. "Bro, oh wait, I should just call you Jake now. Thanks for taking care of my folks all these years. But I'm back now, and there's no place for you here anymore." He leaned in close, his voice a whisper only I could hear. "That includes your little childhood sweetheart, Sophia Vance. I'll be taking her back, too. A burnout like you, who's been off-grid for a decade, doesn't deserve her." Looking at his smug, gloating face, the last shred of familial affection I held onto shattered completely. I laughed. It wasn't a laugh of anger, but of a detached calm, the kind you feel when observing an insignificant insect. "Take her back? You have no idea why Sophia is the unshakable CEO of the Vance Corporation, do you? You have no idea how the Hayes family business grew from a small workshop into the titan it is today. Ignorance truly is a sin. Here's $500,000, my mother, Eleanor, said as she walked over. She tossed a credit card at my feet, her posture dripping with arrogance. Consider it compensation for the 10 years we raised you. Take the money and get out. Don't ever show your face to us again." My sister, Ashley, chimed in with a shrill voice. "Exactly. You're a fake. Hasn't mooching off our family for 10 years been enough? Get lost. Just looking at you is bad luck." I didn't even glance at the card on the floor. I just looked at them calmly. At the couple I once believed were my loving parents, and the sister I had once adored. Their faces under the glittering crystal chandelier seemed so alien, so ugly. 10 years ago, I was the valedictorian of my state and accepted into MIT. Just before graduation, I was selected by Dr. Chen to join the nation's most critical research initiative. Before I left, I used my professor's connections to link my father, then just a small-time businessman, with the influential Mr. Costello, putting him on the fast track. Over the past decade, whenever the family business faced a crisis, I anonymously provided solutions and critical intelligence through encrypted emails. I thought I was protecting my family. It turned out to be nothing but a joke. I don't need the money, I said slowly, my voice not loud, but it carried clearly through the hall. From this day forward, I have nothing to do with the Hayes family. With that, I didn't spare them another look. I bent down, picked up my worn duffel bag, and turned toward the door. Behind me, I heard Leo sneer, putting on a brave face. With no money and no connections, let's see how long you last. My father's voice was as hard as iron. Alfred, throw all of his things out. The Hayes family doesn't keep traces of failures. I pulled open the heavy, ornate doors. A cold wind blew in, scattering my exhaustion and waking me up completely. Phoenix. From now on, I am just Jake. Jake, a servant of the nation. Chapter 2, I walked out of the mansion into the deep night. Behind me, the main door slammed shut with a loud bang, courtesy of the butler, sealing off the sounds of their cheerful celebration. My sister, Ashley, followed me out, standing on the top step with her arms crossed, looking down at me. Oh, leaving so soon? I thought you'd try to stick around a little longer. What's wrong? Nowhere to go. Need me to call an Uber for you? Oh, right, a guy who just crawled out of the mountains probably doesn't know how to use an app, huh? She laughed, her face a mask of malicious glee. I ignored her and took out a plain black, unmarked phone, pressing a button on the side. Initiate Protocol 1. Rendezvous at Point Alpha, I said quietly into the device. Ashley's mocking expression deepened. Haha, still putting on act. Who are you even calling? You don't actually think your childhood flame, Sophia Vance, is coming to get you, do you? Dream on. She's with my brother right now. Just as she finished speaking, the low rumble of a powerful engine grew closer. A black Lincoln Navigator glided to a silent stop in front of me. Its body lines were smooth and imposing, with a solid sheen in the dim light. The model looked ordinary, but anyone who knew cars could tell this was not a commercially available version. Ashley sneered. Seriously? I thought it was some supercar. Turns out it's just a lame SUV. Jake, your taste in Ubers is so patriotic. I didn't respond, simply opening the door and getting in. The interior was spacious, with custom-fitted seats designed to minimize fatigue from long journeys. The driver, dressed in a severe, dark suit, was expressionless, but his eyes were sharp as a hawk's. Just as the Navigator was about to pull away, a fire-red Ferrari sports car roared up, executing a perfect drift to stop right beside us. The window lowered, revealing a face of stunning, cold beauty. It was Sophia Vance. She was wearing a black, professional power suit, her makeup flawless, but her eyes were like two bottomless, icy pools. She just stared at me, silent, but the emotions swirling in their depths were more complex than any words. 10 years, and she had become even more striking and even colder. Standing on the steps, Ashley's face immediately shifted to a fawning smile. Sophia, you're here. My brother is waiting for you inside. Sophia didn't even glance at her. Her gaze was locked on me. After a long moment, her lips parted, her voice cool. Get in my car. I shook my head. No need. I have a ride. Sophia's brow furrowed instantly, and the temperature inside her car seemed to drop several degrees. She looked like she wanted to say more, but held back. Send me the address, she clipped out before raising the window. With a press of the accelerator, the red sports car shot away like an arrow. The Navigator pulled away smoothly in its wake. Ashley was left standing there, the smile frozen on her face as she watched the two cars disappear. Just then, a Lamborghini carrying a few rich kids happened to drive by. The blonde guy in the passenger seat was about to whistle when he caught sight of the Navigator's license plate. He slammed on the brakes so hard he nearly rear-ended his friend. Holy crap, is that a G2 plate? You gotta be kidding me. The guy was so scared the cigarette fell from his hand onto his pants. His friend was confused. What's the big deal, Kevin? It's just an SUV. Just an SUV? Are you blind? Kevin smacked his friend on the back of the head, his voice trembling. That's not a car you get to talk about. Go home and ask your dad what you're supposed to do when you see plates like that. Get the hell out of the way or get out and salute. Ashley saw and heard everything. The color drained from her face. Staring in the direction the Navigator had vanished. A sense of unease she had never felt before seized her heart for the first time. The man she had dismissed as a failure. What kind of car was he riding in? Chapter 3, The Pinnacle Club, was the most exclusive and decadent playground in the city, a place where fortunes were won and lost in a single night. When the driver dropped me off, Sophia was already waiting at the entrance. She had changed out of her severe business attire and was now wearing a wine-red slip dress that clung to her stunning curves. Her long hair was down, cascading over her shoulders, softening the sharp edges of the CEO and revealing a more alluring, feminine side. Seeing me step out of the Lincoln Navigator, a complex emotion flickered in her eyes, but it was quickly masked by her usual icy demeanor. "Follow me," she said succinctly, turning to lead me into the club. It was a private party for her inner circle. In my worn hoodie, I stuck out like a sore thumb. "Sophia, who's this?" a glamorous woman asked, looking me up and down with curiosity. Sophia answered coolly, "A friend of mine, Jake." She didn't elaborate, but for her to say the words "a friend of mine" was enough to make everyone in the room see me in a different light. We had just settled into a sofa in a quiet corner when an unwelcome guest appeared. It was Leo. He swaggered over with a few friends who looked like classic trust fund brats, a provocative smirk on his face. Well, if it isn't Jake. What happened? Get kicked out of the house, and now you're latching onto our Sophia? He deliberately emphasized the word our. Sophia's expression turned glacial in an instant. "Leo, watch your mouth." "What did I say, Sophia?" Leo feigned innocence, spreading his hands. "I'm just showing some concern for my future brother-in-law." "Oh, wait. You're nothing now, are you?" One of the guys behind him, a blonde kid, chimed in. "Leo's right. A failure who got thrown out by the Hayes family has no right to be sitting here, especially with the CEO herself." With that, he picked up a glass of whiskey and thrust it in front of me. "Look, kid, if you want to hang around, you can. Drink this and apologize to Leo." The atmosphere in our booth froze. All eyes were on me. Some pitiful, some mocking, but most were just eager to watch the drama unfold. I didn't move. I didn't even bother to look up. Getting angry at this clown would be a loss on my part. But Sophia couldn't stand it. She shot to her feet, grabbed a glass of ice water from the table, and threw it directly in the blonde kid's face. "Who do you think you are?" she said, her voice low but sharp as ice, radiating an authority that could not be questioned, to tell him to drink. The entire area fell silent. The blonde kid was stunned, water dripping from his face. Leo's expression turned ugly. "Sophia, you'd do this to me for a failure like him." Leo's voice was laced with jealousy and rage. Sophia let out a cold laugh. She suddenly sat back down beside me, picked up a perfectly chilled jumbo shrimp, and in front of everyone, used her slender fingers to slowly peel it. Then she held the plump, glistening piece of shrimp to my lips. "Open up." The gesture was so natural, so intimate, as if she had done it 1,000 times before. I was slightly taken aback, but opened my mouth and ate it. The shrimp was sweet and fresh, carrying the faint, pleasant scent from her fingertips. The act was like a resounding slap across Leo's face. His face went from pale to red, then to a dark purple. His fists were clenched so tight his knuckles were white. "Sophia, you're really something," he spat through his teeth, turning as if to explode. Just then my phone vibrated. I pulled it out. It was a text message. "Incoming call from Dr. Chun." My brow furrowed slightly. I leaned towards Sophia and said quietly, "I have to take this." With that, I stood up and walked past the livid-faced Leo as if he were nothing more than a piece of furniture. As Leo watched me leave, a venomous light shot from his eyes. He felt as though this failure, who had appeared out of nowhere, had just ruined everything for him. He had no idea that from the moment that thought entered his mind, his ruin was already a foregone conclusion. Chapter 4. I stepped out of the noisy club into the quiet hallway and dialed the number back. "Dr. Chun. Jake, my boy, how are you feeling? Are you adjusting to your leave?" The voice on the other end was old and kind. It was Dr. Chun, the head of Project Aegis. "Everything's fine, sir," I replied, avoiding the messy details of my family situation. "No need to worry the old man with that." Good. While you're back, I need you to do something for me. The urban security module of the Aegis system needs live field testing. I've already spoken with Director Evans in your city. Find some time to head over there and help them complete the data acquisition. Yes, sir. Mission accepted. After hanging up, I turned to go back, only to find myself face-to-face with Leo. He had obviously followed me, the blonde kid trailing behind him. Taking a call? Who was that? Begging one of your poor relatives from the sticks for help. Leo stood with his hands in his pockets, his face a mask of contempt. I couldn't be bothered with him and tried to step around. He blocked my path, dangling a car key in my face. See this? The new Ferrari SF90. Over $1 million. A failure like you could never afford one in your lifetime, right? I looked at his pathetic, gloating expression and found it almost amusing. $1 million. The custom-armored Lincoln Navigator in my secure garage. One of its reinforced tires costs more than this entire car. Oh, right, I forgot to tell you, Leo said, as if just remembering something, his smile growing wider. My dad has already transferred 30% of the company's shares to my name. From now on, I'm the heir to the Hayes fortune. And you're nothing. He thought his words would sting me, but he had no idea that I never cared about the Hayes family's trivial business empire. What I protected was 1,000 times more important. Just then, the club manager came rushing out of the elevator with a middle-aged man. Director Evans, what an honor to have you here. I do apologize for not greeting you at the door, the manager said, his face plastered with a fawning smile. When Leo saw the man, his eyes lit up, and he immediately went over. Director Evans, what brings you here? It's me, Leo Hayes, Robert Hayes' son. Director Evans clearly recognized him and nodded. Oh, Leo, just here on business. Leo seized the opportunity, pointing at me and complaining to the director. Sir, it's this guy. He was harassing Sophia inside and was completely disrespectful to me. You have to set him straight for me. He wanted to use the director's authority to put me in my place. Director Evans looked in the direction he was pointing. When his eyes landed on my face, he first froze, and then his expression shifted from casual to shocked, then to solemn, and finally to a look of utter, disbelieving reverence. To the astonishment of Leo and the blonde kid, the man who held so much power in this city strode quickly toward me, clicked his heels together, stood ramrod straight, and gave me a perfect, crisp salute. Lead architect. Sir, what are you doing here? His voice was loud, laced with an almost imperceptible mix of tension and excitement. Lead architect. The smile on Leo's face froze solid. His eyes looked like they were about to pop out of his head. I looked at Director Evans and gave a calm nod. Director, I'm just here to see a friend. Of course, of course. Director Evans quickly dropped his hand, his posture incredibly deferential, almost eager to please. Sir, you're on leave. It's a failure on our part not to have arranged a proper reception. I'll make the arrangements right away. That won't be necessary. I cut him off. I prefer the quiet. Understood. Absolutely. Director Evans nodded repeatedly. Then he spun around, his gaze as sharp as a knife as it landed on Leo. You were saying, he growled, his voice thick with anger, that the lead architect was harassing you? Leo trembled, unable to form a coherent sentence. And no, Director, I was just kidding. He never would have dreamed that the man he saw as a worthless failure could command such respect from Director Evans. Lead architect? Lead architect of what? A massive question mark and a boundless terror exploded in Leo's mind simultaneously. Chapter 5, the incident with Director Evans, was just a small interruption. For Leo, however, the impact was world-shattering. When I returned to the booth, the look in his eyes had changed from contempt to a complex mixture of fear and venom. Sophia, ever perceptive, noticed the shift in atmosphere. She didn't ask any questions, but simply moved a little closer to me. After the party, she insisted on driving me. Where are you staying? She asked in the Ferrari, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. The Grand Imperial Hotel. It was one of the many secure locations I owned, managed on my behalf by Mr. Costello. Sophia drove in silence. The car was filled with the pleasant scent of her perfume and an almost tangible tension. Where did you go for the past 10 years? She finally asked the question that had been hanging between us. A very remote place. It was a classified mission. I answered honestly, unable to provide any more detail. Was it dangerous? It was manageable. Another long silence fell between us. It wasn't until the car pulled up in front of the hotel that she turned her head, her beautiful eyes locking onto mine in the dim light. "Jake, don't you ever disappear again." Her voice held a subtle tremor of vulnerability and hurt. My heart stirred. I nodded. "I won't." The next few days were peaceful. I split my time between assisting Director Evans' team with the data tests and enjoying my rare vacation. The calm was broken by a call from Sophia. "Jake, I need your help," she said, her voice strained with fatigue. At a board meeting for the Vance Corporation, Sophia was facing an unprecedented crisis. Several shareholders, led by the Hayes family, had colluded with Vance Corp's biggest rival, Horizon Group, in a hostile takeover attempt to force Sophia out. The linchpin of their plan was a minority shareholder with a 5% stake, Mr. Costello, the same man who had been my father's key to success. If he sided with them, Sophia would lose her controlling interest in the company. The atmosphere in the boardroom was electric with tension. Leo sat next to his father, Robert Hayes, a smug look on his face as he watched Sophia, who sat at the head of the table with an icy expression. "Sophia, I suggest you be reasonable. If you agree to marry me, our two families can merge our interests, and Vance Corp will be stronger than ever. Otherwise what?" Sophia cut him off coldly. "You think you're worthy?" "You." Leo shot up, slamming his hands on the table. Robert quickly pulled him back down, a fake smile on his face. "Sophia, let's not be emotional. Mr. Costello is on our side now. The outcome is already decided. You're a young woman. Why make things so difficult for yourself?" All eyes turned to Mr. Costello, who had been sitting in a corner with his eyes closed, seemingly dozing. Mr. Costello was the city's unofficial kingpin, with connections on both sides of the law. No one dared to cross him. His presence today was the source of Robert Hayes' confidence. Mr. Costello slowly opened his eyes, just about to speak. His phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID. It was an unknown, encrypted number, but a specific emblem next to it made his pupils contract sharply. Without a moment's hesitation, he stood up and stepped outside the boardroom to answer. A calm, young voice was all he heard. "Costello, Sophia Vance is with me." That was it. Just one sentence. Beads of cold sweat instantly formed on Mr. Costello's forehead. He would never forget that voice in his life. It was the owner of that voice who, with a single word years ago, had elevated him from a street-level thug to his current position of power. Everything he had, he owed to this man. And now, the Hayes family and Leo were trying to make a move on this man's woman. They have a death wish. These idiots are trying to drag me down to the grave with them. Mr. Costello hung up, his shirt already soaked through with cold sweat. He pushed the boardroom door open and, under the expectant and confused gazes of everyone present, walked straight up to Robert and Leo Hayes. Then, he raised his hand and delivered a resounding slap across Leo's face. Crack! The sharp sound echoed in the silent room. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone was stunned. Leo clutched his cheek, looking at Mr. Costello in disbelief. "Mr. C, you hit me. Hit you." Mr. Costello slapped him again with the back of his hand, his eyes burning with a murderous rage. "I'm going to kill you today, you worthless little punk." He pointed a trembling finger at Robert Hayes and roared. "And you, Robert Hayes, have you lost your goddamn mind? You dare to go against Ms. Vance? As of today, all business between us is terminated. And you just wait. If I don't bankrupt your family within 3 days, my name isn't Costello." Finished. He spun around and faced Sophia, who was just as stunned as everyone else. He bowed a full 90 degrees, his voice filled with reverence. "Ms. Vance, I'm so sorry. I was blind, deceived by these greedy fools. From this day forward, my organization, everything I have is at your disposal. Just say the word." The boardroom was utterly, deathly silent. Sophia stared at the unbelievable scene unfolding before her. The calm face of Jake and his words, "I'll handle it," flashed in her mind. Her heart began to beat uncontrollably fast. Chapter 6, The Crisis at the Vance Corporation, was resolved in the most bizarre way imaginable. The Hayes father and son were thrown out of the boardroom in disgrace, and Leo became the laughingstock of the entire business community. He couldn't understand it. No matter how he tried, he couldn't figure out why Mr. Costello had done a complete 180. He blamed it all on Jake. A sick, Twisted jealousy and hatred began to fester inside him. He swore to himself that he would crush Jake under his heel and take everything that was his. His opportunity, he thought, came soon enough. Sophia's birthday was approaching. Leo decided he would throw her the most extravagant public proposal the city had ever seen. He wanted everyone to know that Sophia Vance was his woman. It was his way of declaring war on Jake. He liquidated nearly all of the Hayes Corporation's available capital to bribe the management of the Central City Plaza and hire the region's largest drone performance company. On the night of her birthday, Pioneer Square was packed. A massive crowd had gathered, drawn by rumors of a multi-million-dollar romantic gesture. Leo stood on a temporary stage in the center of the plaza, holding a huge bouquet of blue roses, looking dapper and confident in a tuxedo. He was certain no woman could refuse a spectacle of this magnitude. Robert and Eleanor Hayes stood in the crowd, their faces beaming with pride. "Look at my son, so capable. What does that Jake have to compete with him?" Eleanor boasted to the other wealthy socialites around her. At exactly 8:00 p.m., with a snap of Leo's fingers, over 1,000 drones lifted into the sky in unison. They formed a gigantic, lifelike portrait of Sophia against the night canvas. Gasps of amazement rippled through the crowd. Then, the drones shifted formation, creating 3 massive, glowing words. "Marry me, Sophia." The dazzling lights illuminated the entire night sky. Leo raised a microphone to his lips and shouted with passion, "Sophia, I love you. Be mine." All the spotlights swiveled to the entrance of the plaza. Sophia appeared. She was in a black gown, as stunning and unapproachable as a queen of the night. Her arrival captured everyone's attention. The smile on Leo's face widened. He opened his arms, ready to embrace his queen. But Sophia didn't even look at him. Her gaze traveled across the dense crowd, past the brilliant lights, and landed with perfect precision on a figure in the most inconspicuous corner of the plaza. A man in a simple, worn hoodie was standing there. Jake. He looked like an ordinary person who had accidentally wandered into a fairy tale, quietly observing the drone show with a neutral expression. The flight control system is sloppy. The logic algorithm is crude, and the pathing is inefficient. There's at least a 3% risk of collision. Amateur. As he was critiquing the display in his head, he saw Sophia move. She ignored Leo and his outstretched arms on the stage, ignored the shocked stares of everyone around her, and began walking, step by steady step, in his direction. Time seemed to stand still. The entire world, with all its noise and glamour, became nothing more than a backdrop for her. She walked right up to me and stopped. Under the watchful eyes of thousands, she reached out and gently straightened the slightly wrinkled collar of my hoodie. Then, she stood on her tiptoes, leaned close to my ear, and whispered in a voice only I could hear. "This light show is hideous. I hate it." She pulled back a step, while Leo's face twisted in a mask of jealousy and humiliation, and while the entire plaza was shrouded in a dead silence. She took my hand in hers. And then she kissed me. In that instant, all the man-made romance in the night sky faded to black. Chapter 7. The atmosphere in the plaza became excruciatingly awkward. Leo stood on the stage like a clown abandoned by the entire world. The blue roses in his hands fell and scattered at his feet. Sophia. Jake. He squeezed the names through his clenched teeth, his eyes bloodshot, his sanity incinerated by the flames of jealousy. He leaped off the stage and charged toward us like a madman. "I'll kill you, you worthless piece of trash." He swung his fist, aiming straight for my face. Sophia's expression changed, and she instinctively moved to stand in front of me. I gently pulled her behind me, my eyes calmly fixed on the approaching Leo. Pathetic. A split second before Leo's fist could connect, everything changed. Several people who had been mingling in the crowd, appearing to be ordinary bystanders, suddenly sprang into action. They moved with the speed of lightning. In a blur of motion, they intercepted Leo just as he reached me, slamming him to the ground and pinning him there. One of the agents pressed a knee hard into his back, immobilizing him completely. "Let me go. Who the hell are you people?" Leo struggled and screamed, his voice raw with fury. One of the men, dressed in a plain jacket, pulled a badge from his coat, and flashed it in Leo's face. Department of State, Diplomatic Security Service. Leo Hayes, you are being detained for threatening a protected national asset. You're coming with us. The agent's voice wasn't loud, but it hit Leo like a bucket of ice water, extinguishing his rage. DSS? A protected national asset? He looked up in disbelief at me, standing there completely unharmed, his eyes filled with a new, terrifying confusion. The commotion quickly drew the attention of Robert and Eleanor, who were still fuming over their son's public humiliation. They pushed through the crowd and saw their son pinned to the ground by several strangers. They immediately lost it. What are you doing? Let go of my son. Is there no law in this country? Eleanor shrieked, trying to rush forward. Robert bellowed. I'm Robert Hayes of the Hayes Corporation. I don't care who you are. Release my son immediately, or I'll make sure you regret it. The lead agent gave him a cold glance, completely unfazed. Jake, this has to be your doing. Eleanor redirected her fury at me. You ungrateful brat. We raised you for 10 years, and this is how you repay us? You'll burn for this. I looked at her face, twisted with rage, and felt a profound chill. I took out my phone and dialed Director Evans. Director, Pioneer Square. I have civilians obstructing a federal operation. Director Evans, on the other end, was clearly startled. I'm sending units immediately. In less than 10 minutes, a dozen police cars, sirens wailing, surrounded the entire plaza. Director Evans led the charge himself. The moment he stepped out of his car, he saw Leo on the ground and the grim-faced plainclothes agents. His heart sank. He knew this was serious. Lead architect, he said, rushing over to me and saluting. What's the situation? By the book, Director, I said calmly. Yes, sir. Evans turned and gave a sharp command. Take anyone obstructing this operation into custody. All of them. Robert and Eleanor tried to raise hell, but they were quickly flanked by 2 officers each and restrained, their protests useless. Jake, you monster. I'm your father. Robert continued to shout in vain. I watched them being forced into the back of a police car, my expression unchanging. From the moment they threw me out of their house, they were no longer my parents. Chapter 8 Leo was taken into federal custody, and Robert and Eleanor Hayes were detained for obstruction of justice. The Hayes family was turned upside down overnight, and the Hayes Corporation, the catalyst for it all, was about to face its apocalypse. Mr. Costello's revenge was swift and brutal. He mobilized his entire network, every resource at his disposal, and launched an all-out assault on the corporation. Supply chains were cut, banks recalled their loans, and business partners terminated their contracts en masse. In just 3 days, the Hayes Corporation's stock plummeted, hitting zero value. Its capital chain snapped, and it was pushed to the brink of bankruptcy. When Robert and Eleanor were released from custody, this was the disaster that awaited them. They tried everything, begged everyone they knew, but no one dared to offer them a lifeline. The word was out. They had offended someone even Mr. Costello was terrified of. In their desperation, they turned to their last resort, Mr. Costello himself. They took what little cash they had left and went to his corporate headquarters. They knelt at the entrance, begging him for mercy. Mr. Costello refused to see them, sending his secretary with a simple message, tell them to get lost. The Hayeses were utterly broken. Back at the office, panic had set in. Employees were scrambling to find new jobs. Amid the chaos, Robert's longtime executive assistant, a young woman named Chun, was clearing out old files when she stumbled upon an encrypted folder. The folder was named Patron. Curiosity piqued, she opened it. Inside were over a dozen emails spanning the last 10 years. Each email had arrived at a moment of dire crisis for the Hayes Corporation, providing precise guidance and ingenious solutions. From breaking through technical bottlenecks and managing market crises to securing crucial partnerships. It was no exaggeration to say that without these emails, the Hayes Corporation would not exist today. Chun was floored. She had always thought Mr. Hayes was a brilliant businessman, but she never imagined there was such a powerful figure guiding him from the shadows. With trembling hands, she clicked on the sender's information. It was an encrypted address she had never seen before, composed of a complex string of code. But at the end of every single email, there was the same signature. Uji, regards, Take care of your health. Ji? Chen's mind instantly flashed to the adopted son who had been cast out, Jake. She didn't hesitate. Grabbing the laptop, she burst into the chairman's office. Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Hayes, you have to see this. As Robert and Eleanor stared at the familiar emails on the screen and listened to the secretary's explanation, they were completely dumbstruck. The mysterious benefactor who had been secretly protecting the Hayes family for a decade, the one who had nurtured the company from a small workshop into a publicly traded giant, was the very person they had personally thrown out, the one they had scorned as a failure. Jake. Eleanor looked at the date on the last email. It was sent just a month before Jay came home. Her eyes fell on the final line. Take care of your health. Her vision blurred, and the world went black. Aya. She let out a soul-shattering scream, clutching her chest as she collapsed into tears. Everything she had been so proud of, all the wealth and status she had used to humiliate Jake, had been a gift from him. Robert was trembling uncontrollably. He slumped into his chair, the color draining from his face. He remembered the worn-out hoodie Jake had been wearing, the credit card he had thrown at his feet, the cruel, cutting words he had said. Each memory was a sharp knife, twisting in his heart. Regret, like a merciless tide, drowned them completely. They finally understood. They hadn't thrown out a burden. They had thrown out the family's sole guardian angel. Chapter 9, Regret, couldn't solve a thing. The bankruptcy of the Hayes Corporation was now a certainty. Meanwhile, a different battle had caught up to me, and I was losing. 10 years of high-intensity, round-the-clock research had pushed my body to its absolute limit. The recent turmoil had kept my nerves on a knife's edge. The moment I finally relaxed, the accumulated exhaustion hit me like a tidal wave. I collapsed in my hotel room without any warning. When I woke up, I was in a bright, clean, private hospital room. The air smelled of antiseptic, and in 4-line was attached to the back of my hand. Sophia was asleep in a chair by my bed, her head resting on her arms. There were faint dark circles under her eyes, and her brow was furrowed in a troubled sleep. I shifted slightly, and she woke up instantly. Jake, you're awake. Her eyes first lit up with joy, which was quickly replaced by a wave of fear and worry. You scared me to death. The doctor said you were suffering from severe exhaustion. If they'd found you any later, it would have been critical. Seeing her frantic expression warmed my heart. I'm Fina. Don't say you're fine. Her eyes turned red, her voice cracking. Do you have any idea you were unconscious for 2 days? It was only then that I realized this was no ordinary hospital. In the hallway outside my room, armed soldiers stood guard at regular intervals. The few doctors and nurses who walked by were high-ranking military personnel. This was Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, the most prestigious military hospital in the country. How did I get here? I asked, confused. Dr. Chen arranged it, Sophia said, tucking the blanket around me. He knew the moment you collapsed. He sent a private medevac jet to bring you here and assembled the country's top specialists for a consultation. So that's what happened. I was about to say something else when there was a knock on the door. An old but energetic man in a white coat, with a full head of white hair, walked in. He was followed by a team of equally distinguished-looking experts. Dr. Chen, I said, struggling to sit up. Stay down. Don't move. Dr. Chen rushed to my side and gently pushed me back down, his voice full of concern and admonishment. You boy, you never learn, do you? How many times have I told you to take care of your body? He personally checked my vitals and asked detailed questions about how I was feeling. Only after confirming that I was stable did he finally breathe a sigh of relief. You're to rest here and recover fully. You're not to go anywhere. I've had Lieutenant Miller take over for you on Aegis for now, Dr. Chen ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. Just then, a commotion erupted outside the room. Listen, we're Jake's parents. We need to see our son. It was Eleanor's frantic crying. I'm sorry, this is a restricted wing. No one is permitted entry without clearance. A soldier replied in a cold, flat voice. We're his parents. What kind of clearance do we need to see our own son? Ashley, call your brother. Robert roared. My sister Ashley's tearful voice followed. He's not picking up my calls. Dr. Chen frowned and gave a subtle nod to his aide. The aide understood and stepped outside. A moment later, the noise in the hallway ceased. The Hayes family was escorted from the premises. They couldn't even get into the building, forced to stand at a distance and watch as a procession of generals and world-renowned scientists, people they had only ever seen on television, followed Dr. Chun into the heavily guarded medical wing. In that moment, Robert Hayes's strength gave out. His legs buckled, and he collapsed his knees on the cold pavement, right in front of everyone. He finally, truly, and devastatingly understood what he had lost. It wasn't just a son. It was a national treasure, a man so far above him that he wasn't even worthy of looking up to. Chapter 10. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital. During that time, Sophia barely left my side. She cleared her entire schedule, personally preparing all my meals and keeping me company. It was as if the iceberg had finally melted. With me, she showed a tenderness and vulnerability I had never seen before. On the day I was discharged, the people I least wanted to see were there. Robert, Eleanor, and Ashley were waiting at the hospital entrance, looking haggard and broken. The Hayes Corporation had officially been liquidated. The mansion had been seized by the court. In just a few weeks, they had fallen from the highest echelons of society to the very bottom. The moment they saw Sophia and me, they rushed forward. Thud! All 3 of them dropped to their knees in front of me. Jake, we were wrong. We were so blind, so stupid. Eleanor cried hysterically, clutching at my leg and refusing to let go. Please forgive us. Give us another chance. We're your family. Jake. Ashley was sobbing, holding onto the corner of my jacket. I was wrong. I was awful. I shouldn't have treated you that way. Hit me, yell at me, do whatever you want. Just please don't abandon us. Robert, a man who had been proud his entire life, was now weeping, slapping his own face over and over. It's all my fault. I'm a monster. Jake, please. Just call me Dad one more time. Passers-by started to stare, pointing and whispering. Sophia frowned, about to tell them off. But I stopped her. I looked at the 3 people kneeling before me, at their tear-streaked, remorseful faces, and my heart was a sea of calm. Some wounds, once inflicted, can never be healed. Some cracks, once they appear, can never be mended. Without looking at them, I gently pried Ashley's fingers one by one from my jacket. Then, without a single word, I walked straight through the space between them. Jake! I heard Eleanor's desperate scream behind me. Ashley tried to run after me again, but was blocked by Sophia's security. I didn't look back. I got into the black government sedan that was waiting for us. Sophia followed right behind me. The tinted window rolled up, sealing off all the crying and begging from behind. I stared out at the city streets rolling by, then turned to Sophia, who was looking at me with worried eyes. It's over, Sophia, I said softly. Yes, it was all over. My connection to that so-called family was severed for good. The car drove on smoothly. I leaned back against the seat and closed my eyes. Goodbye, Hayes family. Hello, my future. Chapter 11. A month later, the ceremony for the Presidential Medal of Science was being broadcast live to the nation from the Capitol. It was the highest honor in American science and technology. When the presenter's booming voice announced the name Project Aegis, the AI-driven urban defense system, millions of eyes across the country were glued to their screens. Project Aegis is a next-generation national defense apparatus developed independently right here at home, integrating predictive warning, automated defense, and strategic command into a single revolutionary shield. It will stand as a new guardian of our nation. And now, please join me in giving the warmest possible welcome to the lead architect of Project Aegis and the youngest recipient of the Presidential Medal of Science in history, Mr. Jake. Under the spotlight, I walked out from backstage dressed in a sharp, dark suit. No more faded hoodie, no more scorned failure. At this moment, I stood as a symbol of the nation's pride. I accepted the heavy, gold medal from the hands of Dr. Chun, representing the president. The applause was thunderous. In the front row sat the nation's top military and political leaders. They looked at me with expressions of deep approval and respect. And in a quiet corner of the guest section, Sophia sat dressed in a simple white gown. She watched me on stage, tears glistening in her eyes, but on her face was the proudest smile I had ever seen. She was the only family member I had invited. At that moment, hundreds of millions of Americans saw my face on their screens. In a cramped, run-down apartment somewhere, Robert, Eleanor and Ashley were huddled around a small television set. When they saw the brilliant young man on the screen, hailed as a national treasure, and realized it was the same Jake they had cast out, the room fell into a deathly silence. The bowl in Eleanor's hand slipped, crashing to the floor and shattering into 100 pieces. Ashley covered her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. Robert began to tremble violently. He stared, fixated at the face on the screen, so familiar yet so alien. A choking sound escaped his throat, and with a sudden gasp, he coughed up a mouthful of blood and collapsed backward, unconscious. "Dad! Robert!" The small apartment descended into chaos. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. Standing at the podium, I deliver my acceptance speech. This honor does not belong to me alone. It belongs to every unsung hero who dedicated their youth, their sweat, and in some cases their lives to this project. I must thank my country. She gave me the platform to pursue this dream, and she gave me the strength to protect her. And finally, my gaze swept across the crowd, finding Sophia. I have to thank one person. When I was at my lowest point, she chose me without hesitation and brought warmth back into my life. Half of this honor belongs to her. Sophia, thank you. The camera operator, perfectly on cue, zoomed in on Sophia. She could no longer hold it in. Tears streamed down her face, but her smile was more radiant than ever. Chapter 12. After the awards ceremony, my life returned to its quiet rhythm. I declined all media interviews and turned down lucrative offers to stay and work in Washington, D.C., choosing instead to return to the secret research base for Project Aegis. That was my true calling. Leo's case was finally settled. For crimes including conspiracy against national security and corporate espionage, he was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. The Hayes family was now nothing but a footnote in history. I heard that Robert had a debilitating stroke and was left paralyzed. Eleanor's hair turned white overnight, and Ashley had to drop out of college to work menial jobs just to keep them afloat. They still tried to contact me sometimes, but their voices could no longer reach my world. Life at the research facility was simple, pure. Outside of my work, I spent all my time with Sophia. She had passed the nation's most stringent security vetting and was granted special clearance to live on the base as my family. She resigned as CEO of the Vance Corporation, turning it over to a trusted board, and opened a small coffee shop right there at the facility. Every day, after finishing my work, I would go to her cafe. She would make me my favorite latte, and we would sit together quietly, watching the light change over the lake outside the window. In the evenings, we'd walk hand in hand along the shore. The golden light of the setting sun would illuminate her face, casting a gentle glow around her. "Are you going to leave again?" she asked softly, her head resting on my shoulder. I squeezed her hand tightly and looked toward the distant horizon, where the country we both protected lay sleeping. I turned and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. "Never again. Wherever you are is home."